Okay, I would like to welcome everyone to today's webinar from the Fort Detrick Business Development Office. This is the second of a four-part series on marketing to the federal government. I am Gloria Larkin, President of Target Gov, and we're honored to be presenting this webinar in conjunction with the Fort Detrick Business Development Office. Before we get started, I have a few webinar notes to share with you so that today's session runs smoothly. First, this is a live webinar. So for those attending today, you're online for the visual and dialed in via telephone portion of the webinar. If you are viewing this as a recording, you're seeing and hearing this via internet, you don't need to worry about dialing in on your phone. But because this is live, we will mute the attendees today so that background noises will be kept to a minimum. However, even if you're on the telephone and you do need to take another call, we do ask you to hang up and call back in. You will be readmitted. We don't want you to put your phone on hold because your on-hold message may be heard by others if you're calling in via phone. And because we have a large number of attendees today, we are going to ask you to send your questions in by email. You will be able to send your questions in any time during today's session and even afterwards if you think of a question after we've finished. Everyone who sends in a question via email will receive a personal answer. So jot down this email address, and it's at the bottom of every screen also. So if you look at the screen now, you'll see at the bottom where it says questions, and send them to ask@fdbdo.com. If you're just listening and not seeing the screen, let me tell you what that is again. Ask, A-S-K, at FDBDO.com. And we will reply. So if you're listening to this as a recording, you can ask your questions 24/7 whenever you're listening to this, and you will receive a response. We want to make sure and get you the information you need to be successful. If you are on a cell phone and you lose the connection, don't worry. You can call back and you will be readmitted. And if you're at your office and you put your call on speakerphone, please mute the line so that we do not hear your office background noises. And if you have any problems at all while you're on the line, please call the Fort Detrick Business Development Office number, and I'm going to give that to you now so you can jot it down if you need help, 301-620-7071. And we will take chat questions at the end of the teleconference. So for those of you who want to send in chat questions, as well if you want to use the email option, you can do that on your screen. The next hour is going to be chock full of great information. So let me tell you that we're recording today's session so that it is available on demand 24/7 after today's session. And now let's go ahead and get rolling with the Fort Detrick Business Development Office webinar series, Marketing to the Federal Government. I'd like to introduce our two subject matter experts today because they bring an incredible wealth of information and expertise to today's session. Our industry experts are Kathy Minchew, who is President of Federal Insights, and Peggy McShane, who is President and CEO of Net New Growth. Kathy Minchew's background is incredible. She held senior positions in business development at major IT firms, including Booz Allen Hamilton, Computer Science Corporation, and SAIC. She's written white papers on health IT sector markets. She's given webinars and workshops in understanding how the federal government buys health information technology, and she's moderated panels, been keynote speaker. Welcome, Kathy. We're very honored that you've been able to come today and give us your expertise.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And also, since you're tag teaming, I'd like to introduce Peggy McShane, also President and CEO of Net New Growth. Peggy, before she started her company, she was a key member of the senior leadership team during the launch of Booz Allen Hamilton's global health business, and she has over 20 years' experience in the healthcare sector. She has developed her current business as a strategic marketing consulting firm, providing strategy, outreach, and business development services for those folks who want to focus in on the federal government. So we could not ask for two better subject matter experts to lead us through today's session. I'd just like to turn the screen and control over to both of you, and we'll go ahead and get rolling.
Thank you so much, Gloria, and welcome, everyone. This is Peggy McShane. What we will do for the next 40 minutes or so before we turn it over to questions and answers, I will lead some of the primary content discussion on the slides, and then Kathy Minchew will add some color commentary, as we like to say, some of her best practices and lessons learned in terms of teaming. So we will move on to the next slide. Slide 3. If you are new to federal government contracting, you may be very intrigued on why is teaming so important in winning federal government contracts. Because typically in commercial consulting, the contract is it's primarily for your business services or products. But that's not necessarily the case in federal government contracting. And in fact, Kathy and I believe that it is we strongly encourage all of our clients to have a teaming strategy when you move into this market. So that the intent of the next 40 minutes is to really provide you with some strong insights into why you should team. And we're also going to add how you can sell your business in terms of why you need to have a teaming partner with your elevator speech. That is very critical in really selling your services to teaming partners. So slide 3, it's really why is this strongly encouraged by the federal government? And what has really led to this is the small business set-aside programs. For example, the 8A program and others. This is really critical when you look at RFPs and opportunities that come in through federal government contracting. If you look at the evaluation criteria on the RFPs, it's going to specifically state, either with that contract or task order, that there needs to be some kind of teaming arrangement, whether you are a large business or a small business. So that is probably one of the biggest reasons that's really pushing this market in terms of collaborating, teaming, and partnering on federal government contracts. Really, the other thing to add to that is the customer knowledge to the team. When a teaming partner has existing relationships, and you'll hear that term over and over again, relationships. But it's really what are you bringing to the team? You really need to bring value beyond your set-aside 8A or other socioeconomic to the team. So you really need to bring your knowledge of what you are adding value in terms of why the government would even consider you on that team. It is really around your subject matter expertise or your technical expertise. And we'll get into additional information on that. And the other thing to consider is your customers' concerns about an unknown company. I mean, this is a huge risk in government contracting. In the event that a small business fails, it's really important that there is a team of additional contractors that could really pick up the slack in the event a small business fails. And that's very critical in today's economy. It is happening more often than we would like in business today. And that is also something that the government uses to mitigate their risk. Lastly, on this slide, it is to ease the transition from an incoming contractor. It, again, goes into risk mitigation by the government, but it's important when there is recompeting of existing contracts. So when a contract is ending and moving on to a new contract, really it behooves the incumbent contractor to bring on a teaming partner in the event that contract happens to either flip from a large business to small business or brings on additional relationships. So those are really the points of that slide. Kathy, did you want to add anything?
No, that's good.
Okay. Moving on to the next slide. Slide 4. Okay. Additional reasons to really team is to fill in gaps in terms of the statement of work. As the government continues to bring on contractors, and they may not know specifically what they need at any given time, but as programs mature, they then identify we really need specific subject matter expertise or some new technology. There's so much innovation in government today that when a contract may be awarded, they may not know specifically what they need. And it's not too late to actually join a team after a contract has been awarded if you do have specific expertise or a technology that the government needs. So don't be discouraged if a contract has already been awarded to a prime contractor. You should, if you are passionate enough that you do have the right solution, you should also consider contacting the awardee of a contract to let them know, you really have a differentiator, and there's a potential for you to also get on that contract. So never give up, but if you really have something that is different and unique, you should really be able to sell that to any teaming partner. Again, goes into the subject matter expertise, the importance to align with the mission of the agency. That's something I really wanted to really bring out in today's discussion, that you really need to be able to target your expertise to what that government agency is buying. It may not be just generic IT services or hardware and software, but if there is something that's very unique to what you do, you need to make sure you're aligning it to the correct areas. So, for example, science and technology is something that is of interest to many different government agencies today. And you really need to find out where in that government agency they're buying science and technology services or healthcare services, things of that nature. So really learn your customer and learn what their needs are, what their pain points are, and being able to really differentiate your services to that customer. Lastly, one of the big benefits to teaming is to mitigate the financial impact of the contract. And this is really important, particularly with startups, really going back to the risk of keeping a solvent business up and going. It is critical, especially in small businesses today. So even large business contractors, when they look to small businesses, they often look at their financial status, and being able to articulate that you are sustainable is very important in terms of teaming. Kathy?
Yeah. One of the things, what this really means for you is that companies that go after these opportunities with the federal government are looking to team. So don't wait. Don't wait until the RFP comes out, or don't wait until you think, well, I'll wait till someone comes to me. Call them right away. And a non-answer at a company is not an answer. It doesn't mean they have lack of interest. It doesn't mean that you don't have something that's invaluable to them. I've actually even contacted companies on behalf of my clients after the contract RFP release, which is a no-no as far as making a bid, no-bid decision, most likely in the government space. But for teaming, if you've got something unique, don't assume they haven't found a partner that offers that opportunity. And so to me, the most important message for you to take away from this is the minute you identify an opportunity that you're going to sub to somebody else, you want to talk to the companies out there that are pursuing it. And think of it this way. It's not you getting on a team. It's you interviewing these companies to figure out who's got the best win strategy to win this, because that's the team you want to get on. But again, and we'll talk a little bit about later about what you need to do to prepare for that discussion, you just don't blindly call them. You've got to have the compelling reason why you would be an invaluable partner.
Moving on to the next slide, what are the reasons why you would want to prime or subcontract? What is the strategy behind that? And when you're qualifying an opportunity, you really need to consider the positioning of your business on the team. Particularly if you're a startup business, it's really not usually of something of interest. It's probably better to subcontract or really bring your subject matter expertise to a large business or existing small business prime. But there's some options out there. So option one is really, large businesses priming, which is usually the way a lot of small businesses get started, and then the small business as a subcontractor. So the things that are really of interest is really what is your past performance. A large business partner is going to want to know what are you bringing to the table in terms of past performance and subject matter expertise. Do you have an infrastructure in place? Do you really have a business, or are you kind of working out of the garage, which a lot of businesses do start that way, but you really need to make that investment of an infrastructure. And really, there are a lot of myths around this, but really the question is the revenue. Are you detracting from a large business's revenue? And I'm going to defer to Kathy a little bit more on that one. But you really are bringing not only your expertise, but also really helping large businesses in terms of their small business goals. Kathy, you have anything to add there?
No, we'll talk a little bit more about this later.
Okay. The next slide is really another option, so I call it option 2, and that's a small business prime, and having a large business as your subcontractor or additional small businesses as subcontractors. And the only option is when there is a set-aside contract, 51% of the prime business work needs to go to the small business prime. So that is very significant when you are approaching a team, either if you are the prime or if you're approaching a small business partner. You have to understand that 51% of that work really needs to go to small business prime. So that business understanding is critical when you make that first approach to teaming. It's also attractive to large business partners as an entree into new strategic work. So, for example, there's a lot of emerging things going on in government. As stated, there is a lot of innovation going on. And large businesses are kind of very interested in supporting small businesses, particularly with those very strategic pieces of work that could later really grow into something much larger and broader. So it makes it very attractive for a large business to team with a small business in the event that there is a set-aside. So don't be intimidated by the fact that a large business is approaching you. That is actually a good sign. There's source for priming large contracts due to past performance requirements. That is very important because your past performance, along with your relationships with the client, is key. You really need to reconsider if you haven't had the best past performance in the past with that client, whether you have a very good chance at, at winning that contract. But if you do, that certainly makes it very appealing in terms of leading as a small business prime. And then the best position is to build direct client relationships. When you're negotiating on a teaming agreement, particularly as a subcontractor, you want to be able to at least get to some positioning with the federal government clients so that they have some kind of recognition on your small business and not just as a backdrop to the prime contractor. It's a bit harder than it sounds, but that really is ultimately advice in terms of sustaining and growing your business, getting a relationship with the government. The third option, we don't have it really listed here, and we're not going to go into any detail, is to form a joint venture. And that's a strategy that a lot of small businesses do today to really look like a much larger business and be able to compete with large businesses on paper. It's very attractive in terms of what the proposal can look like, but it can get very complicated as well. So we're not going to really get into that today. So, you may ask, where do you go to get these kind of information in terms of partners and teams and what other businesses are interested in the same kind of work? And Christine, I'm going to turn that over to you because I think that the Fort Detrick Business Development Office has some things to offer there.
Thank you, Peggy. Yeah, exactly. This is one of the things that we can help companies a lot with and do very often is helping them find that partner based on a criteria. Sometimes, and I'll give you an example, just recently we had a RFP that was out that needed a specific certification to be held by an 8A company. And we were able to pull that for some companies, and they were able to build some relationships that way. But also, a little bit later, they changed the proposal so any company could hold that certification, and that brought up other companies that made good partners for some of these small companies. And what was interesting about it was we had both small and large companies reach out to us about this opportunity. So I think teaming is not just for small companies. So
yes, and to add on to that, it's really important that you don't wait for there to be an opportunity to consider teaming with companies. If you're focused on a particular federal government agency, you should know who are the prime contractors in there today doing that work, and you should be approaching them now because especially if you're an 8A, a hub zone, a service-disabled veteran-owned small business, a veteran-owned small business, or the new women set-aside category that SBA is coming out with. Because many times the government, and these contracts are 5, 7, 10 years old, are turning them into set-asides, and they need to have a partner ready to flip to. They're not going to flip to a partner at the last minute. They've been preparing. I've talked to many companies when they graduate and they have a current contract. Let's say it's an 8A contract. And I said, what are you doing? It's going 8A. Are you going to sub to somebody else? And they said, we already brought on an 8A partner to do some of the work that when it flips, we're ready for that. So that's another reason, to talk to FDBDO is if you're targeting an agency, who are the prime contractors in there, and start talking to them now. In addition to that, they might even be able to convince the government, if they have a large enough piece of their contract already set aside, if they're talking 30, 40, or even 50% of it already subcontracted out, they might be able to avoid the flip. So these are all reasons that not to wait for the opportunity, but approach these organizations today.
And that's a really good point, Kathy. And everything that you said, all those criteria are things that we generally can search on in our database. If they're a set-aside, geographic location, capability, or even if they do have a past performance with a certain agency. So all good points.
Thank you. So moving on to the next slide, it really does segue into what I had as, when you know more about the opportunity, either through a RFI or source of thought, what needs to be considered when looking for a partner. In the next few slides, it's really a checklist, but it's very good as you check through this. Really, are you qualifying as a good teaming partner? So number one is, filling in the gaps in terms of the proposal offering. Once you receive the RFI or source of thought, is there something that you bring to that scope of work? Look at Section C or the evaluation criteria of the proposal. And if there's something very unique and interesting, you would make a very good teaming partner, and you should potentially move forward in terms of trying to get on a team. The second is really around relationships, and I always put an asterisk next to this on my notes because relationships are really key in business, in any business, but it is key in federal government contracting. A lot of folks think that it's so complex and so large that how can relationships really make a difference? Well, they really do. The government does want to know who they are dealing with. So developing those relationships, really making that a very key investment of your time and of your resources to developing those relationships. And it can be done through existing incumbent contractors, as well as working with the contracting office or program. So again, getting to those government clients. They want to see you more than once. I mean, it's more than just seeing them at a small business meeting or industry event. I mean, you really need to do a lot of follow-up and looking at the long term of developing those relationships. They really want to know who they're dealing with in terms of your program manager. So if you do have someone you want to bid as key, try to get those people in front of the government and your large business or your small business partner. And then getting involved in terms of the RFI response and industry day attendance. Again, a lot of relationship building there. Kathy, anything to add?
Yes. One of the things Peggy said in the very beginning is really important. Lead your discussions with the evaluation criteria. The evaluation criteria, which are usually Section M of the request for a proposal when you're looking at an actual draft RFP or an RFP, or it could be a former RFP if it's a recompete. Of course, all of these documents you can get from FDBDO if you don't have the typical databases like DETRICK, which is now FedSources and Input databases that carry this data. But lead with the evaluation criteria because the evaluation criteria, it changes from proposal to proposal. And it's how the government's going to select. So if you start out your conversation and say, I know this is very important, past performance is very important, small business is very important, it's weighted 50% or whatever, all of a sudden you're getting their attention that you've got something because you're tying what you're about to talk to them about how you're going to help them with the evaluation criteria. Secondly, you would be surprised. I would say close to 90% of the clients I deal with, the small, medium, and the big billion-dollar companies, they're great in talking to the contracting officer, but have they been in to talk to the program manager? No. Many times they don't even know who the program manager is. It's very important not only for you to have a relationship with the contracting officer, which will help you with things with whether the contract's going to be set aside, whether it's going to be, when it's going to be the procurement schedule, that kind of thing, but also visiting the program manager. You want to understand, does the program manager have a vision for where this is going? Is it moving into a direction that's not in the current requirements that all of a sudden you become important to this partner? So, again, you can find out program manager, those types of things, FDBDO databases, they can help you with that. But the reality of it is you want to be able to have a relationship with both sides of the house because you don't know on what they call the source evaluation board, which is basically the board that determines who's going to win the contract. You don't know the weight of the contracting officer versus the program manager. Who's going to make the final decision? Usually in the federal government, it's the program manager. But I have seen many times the contracting officer has a lot of weight to kick companies out before they even get to the program manager's team. So very, very important that it's a dual relationship there, and you're a small business. They should be willing to talk to you.
Thanks, Kathy. So moving on to the next slide, what else are they looking for in terms of teaming? Of course, one of the most attractive things in small business today is your socioeconomic status. And if you are any of these or multiple socioeconomic status, you really do need to make sure that that is known by your teaming partner because some of the evaluation criteria or requirements of the contract are for specific parts of the work to go to specific socioeconomic status. So that can certainly help you. It is very competitive, but you really need to make sure that that is well known in terms of your socioeconomic status. Past performance is really key, and that is so important in terms of after you win the work, it's really delivering. A lot of businesses really get caught up in the sell and are not as focused on the delivery after the contract is awarded, and that will come back to haunt you in terms of your next contract. So make sure you are delivering exceptional work. Like I said, it is a very competitive business environment today, but past performance can really come back to haunt you if you are not doing a good job with your current customers. So make sure you continue that relationship after your contract is awarded and you're delivering great service. Lastly on this slide is strong participation in the proposal process. Now, this may not be as important to the government. They may not be really concerned about who's pulling their weight in terms of the proposal effort, but it really makes a difference in terms of your teaming partner. If you're not as involved, it's really going to be show a lot in terms of the cultural fit, in terms of the business. So you do need to make sure that you are engaged in the proposal efforts, responding to any data calls that the proposal manager is putting out there, and making your best effort from the very beginning of your business relationship. Kathy, anything else?
Yeah, on socioeconomic status, make sure this is really clear, everything you put out. It should be, if you're going to play in the federal government market, it should be every place that you advertise anything. It should be on your website. It should be in your PowerPoint. Don't make people search for your socioeconomic status. Any partner you deal with, you need to make sure that if they have a database, you're in their databases, because this is how they search on these types of set-aside small business categories. And then as far as strong participation in the proposal process, many times, you'll partner with somebody, you'll think you'll be getting work, and there's been a failure in that teaming agreement. The teaming agreement, which, by the way, is a whole other session we could talk about teaming agreements, it's very important that in your teaming agreement you talk about the skin in the game. What are you going to do? Are you going to help review? Are you going to help bring subject matter experts to the proposal process? Are you going to participate in industry days? Put that right in your teaming agreement in addition to what are you going to get out of this? Are you going to get a percentage of the bodies? Are there certain functional areas in the RFP you'll have first right of refusal on? So the strong participation in the proposal process is not just because wouldn't that be nice, it's because it builds a stronger teaming agreement and gives you more skin in the game, so you're more appealing to companies to give a larger piece of the subcontracted out work. I was talking to one client just recently, and we were going back and forth about the piece of work they were going to give this client, and it wasn't very big, and we couldn't figure out why, and it finally came out. The prime contractor said, I have been burned so many times from small businesses that come to my door, want all this amount of work, some percentage of work, and then I don't see them. They give me their past performance, they give me their calls, and I don't see them later. So I don't want to promise anything until after award, till I see their performance. Well, that's where we said, why don't we put what we promise we will do in the teaming agreement? So that if, for some reason, we refuse to do what we agreed to, then the percentages, et cetera, in the teaming agreement are up for negotiation after award.
Thanks, Kathy. I'm going to go through the next few slides pretty quickly because we want to hit some other points here, and we do have questions coming in already, so we want to get to those. So the next slide, slide 9, is really the technical expertise and the corporate qualifications. They somewhat speak to themselves there, but this is very important in federal government contracting. They want to know that people are certified in specific areas. So make sure that your teaming partner also knows that you have people or your company is certified with specific expertise. Anything on that, Kathy?
No, That's good.
Slide 10 goes back to the point earlier we made in terms of investing in your infrastructure. And I know it's very hard, particularly as a small business, to really make this kind of investment. But as your business grows, just always make that investment back into the business. The government wants to see that you have an infrastructure in place to sustain the business. And it is not inexpensive, but it is something that will differentiate you down the road. And then number 9, we've also discussed this financial strength. That's very key. It's a lot harder in today's business environment than it was just a few years ago. But also develop relationships with your bank. I can tell you from my own personal experience recently that is important. So make that investment in your time as well.
And the only thing I'd add we didn't have on this side is really take on an attitude through all of this of quid pro quo. Basically, you're not just here to get on their team, but come to the table with something you might bring them into your business to do. Maybe a future opportunity. Maybe you have a body need. There's a certain expertise you're always struggling to fill. So try to come to the table in a partnership, not a, hey, get me on your team, give me business way. And that'll help build the relationship.
Absolutely. And that segues very well into our next slide, slide 11. What's your best chances of increasing your chance to get on a team? And number 1 is, you really want to look like a business, not like a one-person operation. So really being able to market yourself. Don't be intimidated because you're going to go up against some established businesses or large and mid-sized businesses that have the resources to look really, really good. But don't be intimidated. You really, with an investment of your time, you can really polish yourself and look organized. Don't be intimidated. And we're going to get into the elevator speech in just a minute. Do your homework. We really, on our first webinar, really emphasized do your homework, do your research, and know your customer. So there's many, many ways to get to that kind of information. The more you know, the better equipped you're going to be, and you're going to look like someone who wants to be on a team. Kathy, anything to add?
Yeah, that's good.